الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we continue, ya ikhwan, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, with now our fourth lesson, going through this tremendous work of the Allama, the Walid, Shaykh Rabee ibn Haddee, al-Madkhali, hafidahullah ta'ala, wa ra'ahu, the methodology of the prophets in calling to Allah Azza wa Jal, and within it is hikmah, wisdom, and intellect. And in the previous lesson, we had mentioned the introduction of the author hafidahullah ta'ala, and we began with the first chapter, which was ikramul insan bil aqli wal fitrah, that mankind has been blessed and honored by way of being given intellect and a fitrah, a natural inclination to worship Allah Azza wa Jal. And now bi'idhnillah we move on to the next chapter that the Shaykh hafidahullah ta'ala brings, and that is on page 36 for those who are following along with the book. And that is wherein he says, hafidahullah ta'ala, ikramul bashar bi irsal al-rusuli ilayhim wa inzal kutubi alayhim, that mankind has been blessed and honored by the sending of the messengers and the books which have been revealed to them. That mankind has been blessed and honored by the sending of the messengers. So two affairs he mentions here, hafidahullah. The first one by the sending of the messengers, and the second one are the books which have been revealed to them. Then he says, hafidahullah ta'ala, ثم لم يكلهم الله إلى ما آتاهم من فطرة وعقل. That Allah Azza wa Jal, that He did not leave them, meaning He did not leave mankind to merely rely upon that which He has given them by way of intellect and inclination. That Allah Azza wa Jal, that He gave and He honored mankind with intellect and with a natural inclination, but He subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't leave mankind with those two things alone. And we find that with many of the people that they stop here and they rely upon their own intellect without looking into the revelation of Allah Azza wa Jal and that which He sent the messengers with. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He did not entrust us and leave us to rely upon that which He has given us by way of intellect and natural inclination alone. بل أرسل إليهم الرسل مبشرين ومنذرين. But rather He subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He sent to them rusul, He sent to mankind messengers as bringers of good tidings and as warners. وأنزل معهم الكتب لتبين لهم الحق من الباطل ولتكون مرجعا لهم. And He sent the books along with them. So along with the messengers, Allah Azza wa Jal, that He sent books along with them, so that the haqq and the truth will be made clear from the falsehood, and that those books will likewise be a reference point, that they will be a reference point for the people to go back to, that they return back to those books. فيما يختلفون فيه, they go back to those books in that which they differ over. حتى لا يبقى للناس أي عذر, so that there does not remain for any of the people an excuse, so that no excuse would remain for the people. وَلِتَقُومَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْحُجَّةِ, and that the proof is established against them. فَلَا يَبْقَى لَهُمْ حُجَّةٌ عَلَى اللَّهِ بَعْدَ الرُّسُلِ. So after the sending of the messengers, that there will remain no excuse for them before Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is in reference to the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His noble book, رُسُلًا مُبَشِّرِينَ وَمُنذِرِينَ لِأَلَّا يَكُونَ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَى اللَّهِ حُجَّةٌ بَعْدَ الرُّسُلِ وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا. That we sent messengers as bringers of glad tidings and warners, so that mankind will have no excuse and no argument against Allah Azza wa Jal after the sending of messengers. So from the wisdom of the sending of the messengers and revealing the books to them is that there remains no excuse for mankind. There is no excuse that he has before his Lord Tabarak wa Ta'ala. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا. And Allah Azza wa Jal is the Almighty and the All-Wise Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Then he says, حفظ الله تعالى, وَكَلَّفَ جَمِيعَ الْأُمَمِ بِطَاعَةِ هَؤُلَاءِ الْمُصْطَفِينَ الْأَخْيَارِ وَاتِّبَاعِهِمْ وَالْإِنْقِيَادِ لَهُمْ. Then he Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, he obligated upon all of the nations obedience to those who have been chosen. Obedience to those who have been chosen, yani referring to the messengers, those who are akhyar, yani those who are excellent. And likewise Allah Azza wa Jalla has obligated upon all of the nations that they follow the messengers and that they comply with their way. وَأَنزَلَ أَشَدَّ الْعِقَابِ بِمَنْ كَذَّبَهُمْ وَعَانَدَهُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا. Then he Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, he sent down the severest of punishment upon those who belied and rejected them in this world. وَسَوْفَ يَنْزِلُ بِهِمُ الْعَذَابِ الْأَنْكَى وَالْأَشَدِّ الْعَذَابِ السَّرْمَدِ الْخَالِدِ فِي دَارِ الْجَزَاءِ الْعَادِلِ. نسأل الله السلام والعافية. And he will send upon them a worse and even more terrible punishment, and even more severe punishment upon them, that is eternal, and that is the never-ending torment in the place of just recompense, يعني referring to the nar وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنْهَا. طيب, so after establishing this, ya ikhwan, after establishing that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, that he did not leave mankind to rely upon his own intellect and his own natural inclination, but rather he sent down revelation and he sent to us messengers in order to distinguish between the truth and falsehood. And after establishing there is an obligation upon the whole of mankind and all of the nations that they believe in those messengers and that they follow them and follow their way, and that those who go against them and oppose them, then for them is the most severest of punishment in both the dunya and the hereafter. Then he says, حفظ الله تعالى, after establishing this, ما هي رسالة هذه الصفوة المختارة من البشر صلوات الله وسلامه عليهم وما الذي قدموه لأممهم. Then the question should be, after establishing these facts, so what was the message of these noble and chosen men? What was their message? What was the message that they brought to their people? إن رسالاتهم تشمل كل خير وتبعد من كل شر. Indeed, that their message that they brought to their people, that it encompassed every single good. It included everything that is good, and it repels and banishes every single form of evil. فقدموا للإنسانية كل ما يسعدها في الدنيا والآخرة. So that which they brought to mankind, then it was every single thing that will cause a person to be happy. It's every single thing that will cause a person happiness in both this dunya and in the hereafter. فما من خير إلا دل الناس عليه ولا شر إلا حذر الناس منه. So there is not a single good except that they called their people to that good. There is not a single good except that they informed the people of it and they called them to it. And there is not a single evil except that they had warned the people against it. Then he brings the hadith, Hafidallahu ta'ala, عن عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله تعالى عنهما أنه قال, that Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As radiallahu anhuma, that he said, كنا في سفر, that we was upon a journey, فنزلنا منزلا فمنا من يصلح خباءه ومنا من ينتظل ومنا من هو في جشره إذ نادى منادي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الصلاة جامعة. That is that he said radiallahu anhu, that we were upon a journey and stopped to alight at a place. We were upon a journey and we stopped at a place. So some of us began to set up tents, and others competed with one another in the shooting of arrows, and others grazed their animals. And then an announcer for Allah's Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam called out and announced that we should gather together for the prayer. فَاجْتَمَعْنَا إِلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. So we gathered together around the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. فقال, then he said, إِنَّهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ نَبِيٌّ قَبَلِي إِلَّا كَانَ حَقًّا عَلَيْهِ أَنْ يَدُلَّ أُمَّتَهُ عَلَى خَيْرٍ مَا يَعْلَمُهُ لَهُمْ وَيُنذِرُهُمْ شَرَّ مَا يَعْلَمُهُ لَهُمْ. He says صلى الله عليه وسلم, that there was never a prophet before me, إِلَّا كَانَ حَقًّا عَلَيْهِ, except that it was a duty that was binding upon him, that he should guide his nation to every single good that he knew of, and that he should warn them against every single evil that he knew. وَإِنَّ أُمَّتَكُمْ هَذِهِ جُعِلَ عَافِيَتُهَا فِي أَوَّلِهَا وَسَيُصِيبُ آخِرَهَا بَلَاءٌ. Then he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that this ummah of yours, that this nation of yours, then its security and well-being is at the beginning, and it will be struck in its later part by bala, by afflictions. وَأُمُورٌ تُنْكِرُونَهَا, by afflictions and things which you would find disagreeable, things that you would not accept and would find disagreeable. وَتَجِيءُ فِتْنَةٌ فَيُرَقِّقُ بَعْضُهَا بَعْضًا, and trials will come in succession of each other, one after the other, making the previous one seem trifling, seem as if it is nothing. فَيَقُولُ الْمُؤْمِنُ هَذِهِ وفي رواية هذه مهلكتي. So the believer will say that this is my destruction. فمن أحب أن يزحزح عن النار ويدخل الجنة فلتأته منيته وهو يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر. So whoever wishes and desires to be saved from the fire and to enter paradise, then he should meet his end whilst having true iman in Allah and the last day. وَلْيَأْتِ إِلَى النَّاسِ الَّذِي يُحِبُّ أَنْ يُؤْتَى إِلَيْهِ, and he should treat the people as he himself loves to be treated. He should approach the people just how he would love for himself to be approached. وَمَنْ بَايَعَ إِمَامًا فأعطاه صفقة يده وثمرة قلبه فليطعه إن استطاع. And whoever gives a pledge of allegiance to a ruler and gives him his hand and gives him his heart sincerely, then he should obey him as much as he is able to obey him. He should obey him as much as he is able to. فإن جاء آخر ينازعه فَاضْرِبُوا عُنُقَ الْآخَرِ. Then if another comes, meaning another ruler or leader, comes to dispute his authority, then strike the neck of the latter one. Al-Hadith, the one on Hadith. So the shahid here, ya ikhwan, Allah yubarik fiikum, from the Hadith is the statement sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِنَّهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ نَبِيٌّ قَبَلِي is his statement sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the beginning of the hadith, إنه لم يكن نبي قبلي إلا كان حقا عليه أن يدل أمته على خير ما يعلمه لهم وينذرهم شر ما يعلمه لهم. That there was not a prophet before me, except that it was binding upon him that he should guide his nation to every single good that he knew of, and warn them against every single evil that he knew of. Then he says, Hafidahullah Ta'ala, going back to the speech of Shaykh Rabee Hafidahullah, page 38, هذه رسالة كل الأنبياء تدل على كل خير وتحذر من كل شر لكن من أين تنطلق وبماذا تبدأ وعلى أي شيء تركز. He said, Hafidahullah Ta'ala, that this was the call and the message of all of the messengers. This was the call of every single messenger, that they should guide to every good and warn against every evil. However, where did they start? These are the questions here. Where did they start? What did they begin with? And what did they concentrate upon? And this is in relation to their methodology. That what was their methodology in relation to their da'wah? And this is in relation to their manhaj. That what was their manhaj? What was their methodology when calling to Allah Azza wa Jal? What was it that they began with? What did they used to focus upon and concentrate their efforts upon? That these are the questions that the one who is sincere in his da'wah and he's calling to Allah Azza wa Jal, that these are the questions that he should ask. And these are the affairs that he must know. He must know what the prophets and messengers that they began their da'wah with. He must know what they concentrated on. What was their focus in relation to their da'wah? Why? Because sadly we find that this is where many of the people have fallen off and they've gone wrong from the very start. That they have began their da'wah with other than that which the prophets and messengers began their da'wah with. That they have not set the foundations in regards to their da'wah. As he says, Hafidahullah Ta'ala, إن هناك دعائم وقواعد وأصولا تركز عليها دعواتهم. That there are a number of basic principles and foundations that we find that their da'wah and their cause were based upon. That their da'wah, they had at its core fundamentals and foundations and basic principles that their da'wah was built upon. وتكون أول منطلقاتهم في دعوة الناس إلى الله تلك الأسس والقواعد هي. That they had these principles that were the starting point for calling the people to Allah Azza wa Jal. And these fundamental points and principles are as follows. And then he begins to list them, Hafidahullah Ta'ala. The first one is, of course, no doubt, the affair of at-Tawheed. That they will begin their call, as we mentioned in the introduction, that they will begin their call with at-Tawheed, with singling out Allah Azza wa Jal alone in all acts of worship. As we know, the definition of Tawheed is ifrad Allahi bil ibadah, is to single out Allah Azza wa Jal alone in worship. The second affair, an-nubuwwat, prophethood. From their fundamentals was prophethood, accepting the prophethood and messengership of all of the prophets and messengers. And the third affair, al-ma'ad, the hereafter, that they would teach people about the hereafter and their return, what they are returning back to. Then he says here, Hafidallah Ta'ala, if we look in the footnote on the same page, page 38, that he says after mentioning these three affairs, he says, Hafidallah Ta'ala, ألف في بيان هذه الأسس الثلاثة الإمام الشوكاني كتابا سماه إرشاد الفحول إلى اتفاق الشرائع على التوحيد والمعاد والنبوات. He says, Hafidallah Ta'ala, he mentions a book that was authored by the Imam al-Shawkani, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he authored a book specifically clarifying and detailing these three fundamentals. And he mentions the title of the book, إرشاد الفحول إلى اتفاق الشرائع على التوحيد والمعاد والنبوات. And for those who are able to go back to this book. طيب, then he says, حفظ الله تعالى, هذه الأسس الثلاثة هي ملتقى دعواتهم وأصولها وقد اهتم بها القرآن غاية الاهتمام وبينها غاية البيان. These three principles, they are the point of convergence of their cause. They are the center of their cause and their fundamental principles. And these three principles are given the greatest importance in the Quran, and they are fully explained within it. We find that these three affairs, these three fundamentals, that they are given the greatest of importance throughout the Quran, and they are fully explained within it. وهي أهم مقاصده التي يدور عليها ويكررها. They are also its most important objectives and goals, upon which it centers around and which it continually mentions. ويورد الأدلة العقلية والحسية عليها في جميع صوره وفي غالب قصصه وأمثاله. And it further quotes and cites intellectual and physical proofs for them throughout the chapters of the Quran and throughout the stories that are mentioned and the examples that are mentioned in the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. يعرف ذلك من له كمال فهم وحسن تدبر وجودة تصور. And this is something that is well known. This is something that is well known to those who have full understanding and that they are able to consider carefully and reflect and comprehend well. وقد عنيت بها كتب الله بأجمعها واتفقت عليها الشرائع السماوية بأسرها. And we find within the books of Allah Azza wa Jal that they are given great importance. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given great importance to these three affairs throughout the books that He has revealed, and all of the revealed ways are agreed upon them. وأهم هذه الأسس الثلاثة وأجلها وأصل أصولها هو توحيد الله تبارك وتعالى الذي تضمنته غالب صور القرآن بأنواعه الثلاثة المشهورة، بل تضمنته كل سورة من سور القرآن. Then he says, Hafidahullah, then the most important and lofty of these three principles and the most fundamental of them all is the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. The most important, the most lofty, and the most fundamental of them all, of the three, is the first one, which is Tawheed of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And this aspect and this concept of Tawheed is found in most of the chapters of the Quran. In most of the chapters of the Quran, with its three well-known categories, and the categories of Tawheed, meaning Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, the Tawheed of Lordship, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, the Tawheed of Worship, wa Tawheed al-Asma'i wa-Sifat, and the Tawheed of the names and the attributes of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. that we find these three categories mentioned throughout the entire Quran, as it is found actually in every single surah, every single chapter of the Quran. This is because the Quran comprises of فإن القرآن إما خبر عن الله وأسمائه وصفاته وهو التوحيد العلمي الخبري. This is because the Quran comprises of first affair, it comprises of information about Allah Azza wa Jal and His names and attributes. And this is the Tawheed of knowledge. It's referred to as the Tawheed of knowledge, of knowing about Allah Azza wa Jal and that which He's informed us of Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala. وإما دعوة إلى عبادته وحده لا شريك له وخلع كل ما يعبد من دونه فهو التوحيد الإرادي الطلبي. And the second affair that the Quran comprises of is a call to worship Him alone subhanahu wa ta'ala and to attribute no other as a partner to Him in worship and to reject everything else that is worshipped alongside Him or beside Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is referred to as the Tawheed al-Iradi, the Tawheed of intent, al-Talabi, of intent and action. The third affair, وَإِمَّا أَمْرٌ وَنَهْيٌ وَإِلْزَامٌ بِطَاعَتِهِ فَذَلِكَ مِنْ حُقُوقِ التَّوْحِيدِ وَمُكَمَّلَاتِهِ. The third affair that it comprises of are orders and prohibitions and a command to be obedient to Him, and this is from the rights of Tawheed and is a completion of it. Fulfilling those commands and staying away from the prohibitions is a fulfillment and a right of Tawheed and is a completion of it. The fourth one, وَإِمَّا خَبَرٌ عَنْ إِكْرَامِهِ لِأَهْلِ التَّوْحِيدِ وَمَا فَعَلَ بِهِمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَمَا يُكْرِمُهُمْ أو يكرمهم به في الآخرة فهو جزاء التوحيد. The fourth one, that the Quran comprises of information concerning the honoring which He gives to the people of Tawheed, the honor that Allah Azza wa Jal gives to the people of Tawheed and the favors which He bestows upon them both in this world and the hereafter. So this is the reward and the recompense of at-Tawheed. The fifth and final one that the Quran comprises of, وَإِمَّا خَبَرٌ عَنْ أَهْلِ الشِّرْكِ وَمَا فَعَلَ بِهِمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا مِنَ النَّكَالِ وَمَا يَحِلُّ بِهِمْ فِي الْعُقْبَةِ مِنَ الْعَذَابِ فَهُوَ جَزَاءُ مَنْ خَرَجَ عَنْ حُكْمِ التَّوْحِيدِ. The fifth one is information concerning shirk. Information concerning shirk and the punishment which He sends upon its people in this world and the severe torment that they receive in the hereafter. So this is the punishment for those who abandon at-Tawheed. فالقرآن كله في التوحيد وحقوقه وجزائه. So the Quran is all about the affair of at-Tawheed and its rights and its reward and recompense. وفي شأن الشرك وأهله وجزائهم, and about the people of shirk and the seriousness of shirk and its people and the punishment and recompense that they will receive for their acts of shirk. نسأل الله السلامة والعافية. طيب, ونكتفي بهذا وصلي اللهم وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين وجزاكم الله خيرا. طيب, and before we conclude, ya ikhwan, we wanted to briefly address something that was raised to us, and that is in relation to some concerns that perhaps those who are new to the da'wah regarding our mashayikh and the Tullab al-Ilm and Du'at in the Maktab al-Salafiyah and Salafi publications. And walillah alhamd, we find that which we have been talking about today, and in relation to the topic we're going over, the methodology of the prophets, according to Allah Azza wa Jal, that we find by the fadl and the virtue of Allah Azza wa Jal, that the da'wah of our mashayikh, that da'wah to Salafiyya Muhammadiyah, that it is in line with the call of all of the prophets and the messengers, because it is a call to the tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal. That who do we find prioritizing and nurturing communities upon tawheed and sunnah, that by the blessing of Allah Azza wa Jal, that we have our mashayikh who for decades have been teaching the people this methodology and giving da'wah in accordance to this methodology, and calling the people back to tawheed and warning the people from shirk and those who promote it, calling the people to sunnah, warning the people from innovation and those who promote it. That by the fadl and the virtue of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, that we find that our mashayikh have nurtured entire communities upon these usul, upon these foundations and these fundamentals. So for those who have those concerns, you only need to look at the methodology and understand the methodology of the prophets, and to look at the da'wah of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his sunnah, in order to see and understand that who is truly calling to his sunnah, and who is truly calling to that methodology, and who is nurturing communities upon that methodology. That walillah alhamd is clear for all to see by the fadl and the virtue of Allah Azza wa Jal. So pay no attention to those who speak ill of or try to revile those callers to Qur'ani wa Sunnah, those callers to Tawheed, those who are at work clarifying the deen of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, clarifying the Sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, teaching the people in accordance to the understanding of the Sahaba and the Salaf, those whose efforts and juhud are clear for all to see. Walillahi alhamd wal minnah. And this is not my defense of them or my praise for them, because they are not in need of praise or defense min amthali, from the likes of myself. But rather, ikhwan, we refer back to the ulama, to the scholars, that by the virtue of Allah Azza wa Jal, that we have ulama al-kibar, we have major scholars who have praised them, who spoke well of them, with specific and detailed praises. And we just thought it would be worth mentioning, ya ikhwan, in order to dispel any doubt or any confusion or any concern. And bi'idhnillah, we've gathered some of those praises just as a reminder for us, and to look back and see what the ulama and the scholars have said in relation to them, in order to know their worth and their virtue. And it is a blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal that we have our mashayikh present with us, giving lessons and seminars and conferences. And we have those who have spent years and decades in talab, in seeking knowledge and learning from the scholars, and connecting us to the scholars continuously throughout the years. That no doubt, ya ikhwan, is a virtue from Allah Azza wa Jal, and a ni'mah, and a huge blessing. And walillah alhamd, we have heard with our own ears some of the praises for them, and seen the connection that they have with the ulama, with the scholars of our times. And we will just mention some of those praises, ya ikhwan. Takhayyal that we have the likes of the Allama Shaykh Muqbil bin Hadi al-Wadi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, this Allama who has praised them and spoke well of them, rahimahullah. And these praises are all available, ya ikhwan. They are not something that is unknown or hidden. These praises are well known. And alhamdulillah, from the tawadu' and the humility of our mashayikh, that they don't go around mentioning them. But walillah alhamd, they are there, they are available. That we have, ya ikhwan, the likes Shaykh Muqbil bin Hadi al-Wadi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he referred to them as ikhwanuna, they are brothers, for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, as-Salafiyun, the brothers are al-Maktabatu al-Salafiyah, of Salafi publications in the city of Birmingham. Then he said, rahimahullah, that they are mentioned with goodness and love for the Sunnah and calling to it, and for waging war against bid'ah and hizbiyah. This was his speech in relation to them, that they are known for their love of the Sunnah and calling to it and waging war against bid'ah and hizbiyah. We have likewise the praises of Shaykh Hassan al-Banna rahimahullah, praising them on numerous occasions, referring to them as mashayikh, as he said rahimahullah, that they also have with them many mashayikh, from among them Shaykh Abu Khadijah. They have knowledge, with them is knowledge, and other than him like Shaykh Abu Hakim, Bilal, all of these masha'Allah, and many other people beside them, that they have many other students of knowledge with them from their likes. Then he said, so it is lazim, it is a must, that they traverse upon their way, because they have indibat, that they are firm in their principles, they are grounded in their principles. Walillah alhamd. How many praises do we have from al-Walid Shaykh Rabee, hafidahullah ta'ala? We are going through his book. How many times on numerous occasions has he praised them? And this is something known from the Shaykh, that if you were to visit the Shaykh and he knew you were from the UK, then he would advise you to go back to the Maktabah. He would advise you to go back to them and to study with them. And he said, hafidahullah ta'ala, and we will read a brief quote that is found on the Dar al-Sunnah website. And that is, they said, hafidahullah, that by Allah, we have seen over the years many of the youth in the West who wanted to give da'wah and had with them zeal and great effort. But sadly we found that when they broke away from their brothers in the Maktabah, that they were misguided and began to misguide others. For we have never seen anybody who broke away from them except that this was what he was upon. So be with them, and cooperate with your brothers. And that which is difficult for you, seek their advice in, and return your affairs back to them. And then he made supplication for Allah Azza wa Jal to bless the brothers at Salafi publications, specifically Abu Khadijah and Abu Hakim, hafidahum Allah. And likewise Shaykh Rabee, hafidahullah ta'ala, Shaykh Rabee bin Abdullah al-Jabiri, hafidahullah ta'ala, that he was asked about cooperating with them, the Maktabah Salafiyah, and regarding the claim that they are ghullat, that they are extremists. And he said, hafidahullah, that we know in these days what has afflicted Maktabah Salafiyah in Birmingham from a people who ascribe to the Sunnah. And these people, I don't know what has carried them to make this audacious attack. And we, all praise is due to Allah, know the Maktabah for years. And that which we advise everyone who is affiliated with the Maktabah, regardless of whether it is someone who is part of it, or one who listens to its lessons that are organized by it, or who is close by it, that they don't pay any attention to this audacious attack. They don't pay any attention to this audacious attack. This is because the Maktabah, and all praise is due to Allah, Allah has paved the way for it in the last few years. And in this kalam, the speech of the Shaykh is old, hafidahullah ta'ala. And he said, from the people of knowledge and excellence who have become tied with it and who have acknowledged and partaken in its striving according to Allah Azza wa Jal. And I emphasize that you do not pay attention to this hateful, large-scale attack from some of those who ascribe to the Sunnah, and we know them to be students from the Islamic University of Medina, and we know others, but we do not like to name anyone, And that which I advise the Muslim men and women who have an attachment to the Maktaba Salafiyah is that they have patience and seek aid from Allah Azza wa Jal and not be deceived by the large number of opposers. And this, ya Ikhwani Fillah, is just some of the speech of Ahlul Ilm in our times in relation to them. And walillah alhamd, and this is not something new, ya Ikhwan. And this is all, ya Ikhwan, just a reminder to us and to acknowledge that blessing that Allah Azza wa Jal has bestowed upon us by way of having our mashayikh and our elders to return back to, and who the scholars have encouraged us to return back to, and that we have love for them due to their firmness upon the Sunnah, their love for the Sunnah, their ghirah, and their jealousy and protective jealousy for the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal, their love for the people of Sunnah, and their constant advice and constant concern for the Salafiyun. And this, without doubt, ya Ikhwan, is a huge blessing that we should take advantage of and to benefit from them, from their ilm, from their khibrah, from their experience and their knowledge. And we see, ya Ikhwan, as is coming up, an entire conference whereby we can go and learn and study under them and benefit from them. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal that He preserves them and He rewards them immensely for their juhud and their efforts that they have put in educating the people about Tawheed and Sunnah, and that He allows us to benefit from their knowledge, and that we avoid and stay away from those who slander and attack and have hatred and deep enmity towards the people of Sunnah and their da'wah. And when you look at them, where is their da'wah? Where's the fruits of their da'wah? Those who are attacking them, what efforts have they put in? What communities have they cultivated and nurtured upon Tawheed and Sunnah? Where are the books that they have gone over and finished? The books of Aqeedah, the books of Tawheed and Sunnah, that we find by the permission of Allah Azza wa Jal, that our mashayikh have gone through teaching the books of Aqeedah, teaching the people the books of Sunnah, teaching the people about the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal, multiple classes, spreading knowledge, calling to Allah Azza wa Jal, calling to the Sunnah of His Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And that is no doubt from the fadl and the virtue of Allah Azza wa Jal that He has bestowed upon them, that they are patient and they endure and they continue with their da'wah and they continue to teach the people and nurture the communities upon that which will earn the pleasure of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, upon the Kitab and Sunnah for decades by the permission of Allah Azza wa Jal. So we need to focus, ya Ikhwan, and prioritize ilm, prioritize knowledge, to stick with the people of Sunnah and Salafiyah, stick with the people of knowledge. May Allah Azza wa Jal rectify our situation and preserve the people of knowledge, preserve the people of Sunnah and Salafiyah, and make us firm upon His deen, حتى نلقاه, until we meet Him Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And I apologize, ya Ikhwan, for the lengthy response to this. It's just something that we felt we needed to address. And we will leave it there بإذن الله تعالى. وجزاكم الله خيرا. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. وبارك الله فيكم.